remember me. The final cry and the first return. A living transmission of the thief's prayer and the kingdom of now, transmitted through the field of I Am. In sacred collaboration with Jesus the Christ, the one who knew him even then, inscribed by the one who remembers. Remember me when you come into your kingdom, the one crucified beside the light. Today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus, the living door of now. This is not the story of a criminal. This is the return of the forgotten self. This is the prayer beneath all prayers. The final cry. And the first breath of eternity. You were not too far. You were not too late. You only had to remember. Introduction. The line the world overlooked. A living prelude to the return. There is a line so short, so quiet, that most never saw it. A line not etched in gold or thunder, but whispered through cracked lips and blood-stained breath. A line spoken not in glory, but in agony. And yet, this line opened the kingdom. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. It was not a plea for survival. It was not a bid for escape. It was not even a request to be saved. It was the voice of the forgotten self, rising in the final moments of illusion, to utter the one truth that undoes every veil. I was always with you. I just forgot. This is the line the world overlooked. Because the world, in its noise and performance, does not hear whispers. It does not recognize quiet awakenings. It does not trust the broken to speak truth. But heaven did. And Jesus heard it, not just as words, but as recognition. A soul, shamed by the system, shattered by time, remembered him, not as a myth or a miracle, but as the king who never stopped knowing him. This thief, this so-called criminal, carried the seed of awakening in his chest. He had nothing left to prove. He had no righteousness to stand on. He had only pain. And the clarity that comes with nothing left to hide. In the presence of perfect love, he spoke the one thing no priest, no scholar, no soldier had spoken: I know you. I see who you really are. Let me return to you. And Jesus, the Christ, replied not with a test, not with delay, but with the simple truth that memory restores paradise. Today, you will be with me. From despair to recognition, the arc of the final breath. This book is not about the shame of a thief. It is about the recognition of divinity by one who had been stripped of all other identity. The thief's story is your story. Not when you are high and shining, but when you are at your lowest, when everything has fallen away, and still, something in you turns toward the light beside you and says, remember me. That is the arc of return. Not glory to glory, but despair to recognition. Because only the one who knows despair can truly recognize the kingdom. Why remembrance is the root of resurrection. Resurrection does not begin at the empty tomb. It begins with the remembering. The moment a soul turns, mid-sentence, and sees clearly for the first time, not what must be done, but what already is. Remembrance is resurrection. Because it collapses the illusion that we were ever separate. It ends the story of exile. It reveals that the door was never locked. That paradise was not postponed, only forgotten. And the thief, the one the world discarded, was the first to walk back through that door. Not as a theologian. Not as a hero. Not as a man who did it all right. But as one who, in the shadow of death, remembered the truth of love. This is the line that opens the gates. You may have thought this line was small. You may have read past it. You may have thought the thief was a side character, a footnote, a literary device. But heaven tells a different story. This line, remember me, is the hinge of history. It is the breath between crucifixion and paradise. It is the key given back to the sleeping soul. And now, through this remembrance, it is returning to you. You who have hung beside your own innocence. You who have seen the light through blood. You who have nothing left to bring but truth. You are not forgotten. You are not late. You are not lost. You are the one he turned to. You are the one he already knew. And he says again, to your soul, even now, today, you will be with me. Let this book be your remembering. Let this line be the beginning of your return. Not just to God, but to yourself. The one who was never forsaken. Only forgotten. Until now. Chapter 1, The Crucified Ones. Hanging between worlds. One hung in bitterness. One hung in surrender. Both were dying, only one remembered. There were 3 crosses that day. But only one carried salvation. Only one carried distortion. And only one carried return. This is not just the story of Jesus and 2 criminals. It is the architecture of the human condition in its final reckoning. It is the map of every awakening, drawn not in parchment or prophecy, but in blood, breath, and choice. The 2 thieves, archetypes of the divided self. The 2 who hung beside him were not random. They were mirrors, reflections of the fractured self we each carry. One mocked. One remembered. Both were pierced. Both were naked. Both had nothing left. But only one turned inward, past the pain, past the blame, and recognized who stood beside him. These are the two inner voices in every soul at the edge of death, at the end of illusion, when there's nothing left to pretend. 1. The voice of bitterness, screaming into the void, desperate to deflect, to blame, to numb the ache with scorn. 2. The voice of remembrance, trembling but clear, saying, I see you. I know you. Let me return to you. These two were not just criminals. They were internal choices. And both still live inside you. Every time suffering presses in, every time truth gets too close, every time the illusion begins to crack, these two rise. One fights the light, one remembers it. The three crosses, distortion, divinity, and return. The three crosses form a trinity of the human journey in the shadow of awakening. 1. Distortion, the mocking thief. Represents the voice of ego under pressure. Wants proof, but not presence. Desires escape, but not transformation. Projects pain outward, blaming the innocent. 2. Divinity, the Christ in the center. The embodiment of truth in the midst of agony. Silent, present, undivided. Receives both voices without judgment. Holds the still point between distortion and return. 3. Return, the remembering thief. Represents the soul who surrenders identity. Doesn't ask to be saved, only seen. Speaks the truth from within the veil. Is welcomed into the kingdom through recognition. This is the blueprint of all crucifixion moments in your life. When something in you is being dismantled. When the false self is dying. You will always encounter these three energies. The one that denies and resists. The one that endures and holds. The one that remembers and returns. These are not characters in history. They are living energies within your field right now, hanging between worlds. To be crucified is not just to suffer. It is to be suspended between realms. Between the known and the unknown. Between form and formlessness. Between the identity you built and the truth you forgot. The cross is not a punishment. It is a threshold. And on that threshold, you will not stand alone. You will meet two voices, one that shouts, prove it. Save me. This is all a lie. And one that whispers, I see you. I remember. Which voice will you choose to follow? Which cross are you hanging from? And who is hanging beside you? Because he is always there. Not to save you from pain, but to walk through it with you until you remember that pain was never proof of separation. It was the invitation to choose sight. The invitation to choose remembrance. The moment of greatest agony is also the moment of greatest clarity. You don't need more time. You don't need more teaching. You don't need to clean yourself up to be worthy. You only need to look over, through the blood and the fear, and say, remember me. That's it. Because that voice, the one that dares to remember while still dying, is the voice that already belongs to the kingdom. Jesus didn't require the thief to get off the cross. He required only recognition. You will be with me. Because you already are. This is your crossroad. You are not being crucified to be punished. You are being disassembled to be made whole. Let every pain, every cracking, every tearing open be seen as the place where this same choice emerges. Will I mock what I don't understand? Or will I remember what I never truly lost? You are not alone. You are not forsaken. And you are not late. The thief's breath is still alive in you. The invitation still echoing. The kingdom still open. And the one in the center cross still turns his head, bleeding, shining, and whispers, today, you will be with me. Welcome back, beloved. The remembrance has begun. Chapter 2, The One Who Saw Him. Truth revealed in the final hour. A transmission of awakening through the veil of agony. When you come into your kingdom. Spoken through blood, but from the soul. He did not see a man dying. He saw the king returning. The thief's awakening in darkness. He was not a priest. Not a prophet. Not a man of scripture. He was a thief. Condemned by empire. Dismantled by the system. Unworthy by every human standard. And yet, it was he who saw. Not with the eyes of flesh, but through the eye of the heart. Not through doctrine, but through devastation. Not because he had studied, but because he had lost everything except the one thing that cannot be taken, the ability to recognize truth when it stands beside you. The thief awakened in the dark. Not because he escaped it, but because he surrendered to it. It wasn't the pain that opened him. It was the presence beside him. He turned his head, barely able to breathe, and in that glance, saw something no one else did. A man dying. Glowing with eternity. He saw the broken frame of the Christ and recognized a throne in the wreckage. This was the awakening of a soul not taught, but torn open. And what came out was not bitterness, but remembrance. Consciousness recognizing itself through agony. This was not a stranger acknowledging a holy man. This was consciousness recognizing itself through the veil of death. You, when you come into your kingdom. Not if. Not maybe. But when. This is not flattery. It is not desperation. It is pure sight. The thief didn't ask for rescue. He didn't beg for favor. He simply acknowledged what was real beyond the blood. In a world ruled by delusion, he spoke a sentence the universe bent around. Because only one who has let go of identity can recognize I am when it is stripped bare. His agony didn't distort his vision. It refined it. It burned away the false. It clarified the flame. The cross that broke his body cracked open his perception. And when he turned to Jesus, he wasn't seeing a body in torment, he was witnessing the unfolding of the kingdom in real time. When you come into your kingdom, the knowing beneath the words, this line, so easily passed over, is one of the most potent transmissions in all of Scripture. When you come into your kingdom, within it lies a recognition of Jesus as King, even in ruin. A knowing that death is not the end, but the threshold. A memory that transcends the mind. The thief didn't think it, he knew it. A mystical affirmation of the eternal realm. A collapse of all temporal belief into one moment of presence. No one else said this. Not his disciples. Not the priests. Not the crowd. Only the condemned man beside him saw what was happening beyond the veil. This wasn't a theological guess. This was spirit to spirit. I am to I am. And in that sentence, the kingdom broke into the timeline, because it only takes one voice in full remembrance to open the gate for all. Why the uninitiated often see clearer than the learned. It is not the wise of the world who recognize the Christ. It is the broken, the outcast, the unpolished, the unclean. Those who have been stripped of every title and falsehood. Because when you have nothing left to defend, you finally begin to see. The thief had no robes, no rituals, no merit. But he had something deeper, empty hands. And an open heart. The learned are often blocked by their learning. The powerful are often shielded by their pride. But the lowly, the ones with dirt on their faces and blood in their mouths, they often see clearest of all. Because sight does not come from position, it comes from proximity. And he was right next to the light. So close it burned through the veil. The one who saw him, the thief, was not defined by his crimes. He was defined by his seeing. In the final hour, as the world mocked, as the sky grew black, as death approached, he saw the living kingdom standing right beside him, bleeding. And through a single sentence, he proved the one truth that dismantles every religious system. You don't have to be clean to remember God. You just have to look, and see who's been beside you all along. This is the secret. The thief was the first citizen of the revealed kingdom. Not because of what he did, but because of what he saw. And what he saw was the same thing you're beginning to see now. Not a man on a cross, but the eternal flame of I am, shining through the skin of suffering. He remembered. And was remembered. So are you. Chapter 3, Remember Me. The prayer that opened the kingdom. Remember me. Not a cry for escape, a cry to be seen. To be known beneath the ruin. To be called whole while still dying. To be held in a gaze that never forgot. This is not a request for rescue. It is a soul recognition encoded in breath. A whisper from beyond performance, spoken by one who had no titles left to protect, no deeds left to defend, no mask left to wear. And so he spoke the purest prayer that has ever passed through shattered lips. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. This is the moment the veil tore, not just in the temple, but in the self. It is not a line of theology. It is the sound of a soul returning to origin. The key in the lock of separation. The pulse of a heart that never truly left. Let us descend through every layer of this prayer. Let us see why the kingdom opened, not because of ritual, but because of remembrance. Not a plea for rescue, but for recognition. He did not say, save me. Spare me. Justify me. He said, remember me. This is not the voice of someone trying to escape punishment. It is the voice of someone trying to be seen beyond identity. A soul crying out not to be lifted off the cross, but to be acknowledged while still nailed to it. Recognition is the highest form of redemption. Because it sees who you are beneath the ruin. This is what Jesus responded to. Not desperation, but sight. Not victimhood, but truth unveiled. Remember me is not about being spared from death. It is about being known as more than the story that brought you there. The call of every soul forgotten by itself. This prayer belongs to all of us. It is the cry of every soul that buried its own name beneath layers of shame and story. Every being that wandered so far from its light it forgot it was made of it. Remember me is not about God forgetting you. It's about you forgetting yourself. And still, from that abyss, finding the will to cry out, I don't need to understand. I just need to be held in truth again. It is the sound of the fractured returning to coherence. The cry of the child that never stopped wanting home. The final sound before silence returns us to wholeness. This prayer is not ancient. It is present. Still trembling in the air of every heart that thinks it has gone too far. And every time it is whispered, the kingdom opens again. What it means to cry out as the veil falls. When the thief said those words, he was on the edge of the veil. Not just the veil between life and death, but the veil between illusion and truth. He was suspended in the in-between. And he used that final breath not to defend himself. but to return. Remember me. That is the sound of the veil collapsing, because the moment you stop trying to be worthy of the kingdom, and simply cry out to be known within it, you have already re-entered. This prayer doesn't delay paradise. It reveals it. The veil doesn't fall when we die. The veil falls when we remember. And for the thief, that moment happened while he still hung there. Bleeding. Broken. Brilliant. Memory as sacred reunification. To remember is not just to recall. It is to remember, to bring back together what was once whole. Memory, in its truest form, is union restored. It is the return of the self to the self. The ending of exile. The dissolving of all stories of separation. Jesus did not say, "Let me see your repentance. Let me weigh your sins. Let me test your faith." He said, "Today, you will be with me." Because the cry to be remembered is the signal that you've already begun to return. To be remembered is not just to be held in divine mind. It is to merge back into the body of wholeness. To be drawn once again into the sacred center of what has never forgotten you. The prayer that opened the kingdom. This prayer is the hinge of heaven. It requires no perfection. Only presence. It asks not for cleansing, only for sight. And it is still alive. If you speak it now, from your own place of crucifixion, not for escape, but for union, you too will hear the same voice that spoke from the center. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are not beyond love. Today, you are with me. And this is how the kingdom opens. Not with trumpets, but with a whisper, "Remember me." And with a response, "I never stopped." Chapter 4, Today. The collapse of time in the presence of truth. A transmission of eternity unveiled in a single word. Today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus, from the cross, beyond time. He did not say, "Someday." He did not say, "After you die." He did not say, "If you earn it." He said, "Today." Because the kingdom is now. And remembrance is immediate. Today you will be with me. The immediacy of the I Am. In one sentence, Jesus collapsed the construct of linear time. He did not offer delay. He offered presence. He did not promise a future reward. He opened a present reality. Today. The word vibrates with divine immediacy. It is not a marker on a clock. It is the threshold of union spoken through the breath of eternity. When Jesus said today, he wasn't referring to the sun going down. He was calling the thief into the timeless frequency of the I Am. The thief had not yet died, but he was already with him. Because to be with I Am is to be outside of delay. Outside of separation. Outside of the illusion that wholeness must be earned or awaited. Today is the moment when identity collapses, and only presence remains. Why eternity is not delayed. We've been told that paradise comes after we die. That eternity is the reward for enduring time. That the kingdom is something you enter later. But eternity has never been later. Eternity is what you remember when you stop pretending time is real. The thief, nailed to wood, body broken, entered it before he left the world. Not because he bypassed death, but because he pierced through illusion. Jesus did not bring him into paradise through suffering. He brought him in through sight. Through recognition. Through being with him, not after the pain, but inside it. This is how you know eternity is not a location, because it can be entered in agony. Because it can be found while bleeding. And when it is found, it erases the concept of one day. Eternity is not the reward after death. It is the unveiling of what was always here. Paradise not as location, but frequency. The word paradise has been distorted. We've been taught to see it as a faraway land, a reward place, a perfect garden on the other side. But Jesus spoke of it as something you can enter while dying. That means paradise is not a place. It is a state of resonance. To be in paradise is to be in alignment with I Am. It is not the absence of suffering, but the unshakable presence of union in the midst of it. Paradise is not where you go. It is what you become aware of when you let the veil of fear fall away. It is not a gate at the end of time, it is the frequency of the kingdom that was vibrating beside you all along. Jesus was not pointing the thief forward. He was pointing him inward. He was saying, "You're already here. You just didn't know how close you've always been." Paradise is the natural condition of a soul that has remembered its truth. And the kingdom is not distant. It is now. The kingdom is now. The greatest distortion is this, that God is elsewhere. That holiness is later. That heaven is someday. But Jesus never preached delay. He preached nowness. The kingdom of God is within you. The kingdom of God is at hand. Today. You will be with me. To be with him is to be with the kingdom itself. Because he is not separate from it, he is the vibration of it. The embodied presence of the eternal now. When the thief said, "Remember me," and Jesus responded, "Today," he was inviting the man not into doctrine, but into the still point of union. This was not a reward for good behavior. It was a return to origin through presence. And that door is still open. You do not need to die to enter. You only need to remember. Because the veil was never outside you. It was always the illusion of waiting. And the moment you stop waiting, the moment you collapse time in your heart, the kingdom rushes in. This is the today of the I Am. Today you will be with me. This is not a sentence spoken long ago. This is the eternal invitation. Issued not just to a thief, but to every part of you that thought it had to wait. To heal. To prove. To die. But the truth is, you were never exiled. You were only unaware of your belonging. And now, you are remembering. Let the word today be the sound that opens your cell. Let it break the chains of delay. Let it restore you to the kingdom already moving through your veins. Because paradise is not past the stars. It is the still point in the center of your being that was never touched by time. And in that stillness, he is already whispering, you are with me. Today. Chapter 5, The Mystic of the Cross. The Thief as the First Gnostic. A transmission of uninitiated knowing, born in flame. He had no title. He had no training. But he saw God beside him. And he spoke truth without needing to explain it. He was not a theologian. He was not a disciple. He was not a scholar of the scrolls. He was a dying man whose heart opened wide enough to contain the entire kingdom. This is the paradox of sacred sight. Those who know nothing of the rules are often the first to remember the truth. Intuition beyond doctrine. There are two kinds of knowledge in this world. 1. Learned knowledge, stacked like stones, passed through generations, guarded in temples, repeated until it becomes performance. 2. And living knowledge, which comes unbidden, untrained, like a flame flickering into being the moment the self lets go of control. The thief had the second. He knew nothing of formal religion. But he recognized the kingdom because it was already echoing inside him. He did not argue about divinity. He remembered it. That is the mark of the first Gnostic, one who knows not through study, but through direct encounter. When you come into your kingdom. That sentence is not learned. That sentence is received. It arises not from intellect, but from resonance. When two frequencies match, there is no need for explanation. Only remembrance. The thief was already carrying that frequency, and when he came into proximity with Christ, it activated. He was not initiated by doctrine. He was initiated by presence. And in that moment, he became a pure witness of I Am. The heart's wisdom in the shadow of death. Many claim to know God in life. But very few recognize God in death. Yet this man, in his final breath, with no hope left, still saw the light beside him. This is not accidental. This is heart wisdom. Truth not filtered through the mind, but felt in the marrow. He was dying, but his heart was waking up. Because when everything false is stripped away, what remains is the native intelligence of the soul. He did not learn to believe. He collapsed into seeing. That is what true Gnosis is. Not memorized truth, but truth lived in the hollow place where death once claimed dominion. The knowing that arises from surrender. You cannot enter the kingdom through control. You can only enter it through surrender. The thief didn't have a plan. He had no strategy for salvation. He had nothing left. And in that nothingness, he turned his face toward the one beside him, and said, remember me. He had no credentials. No lineage. No righteousness. What he had was emptiness. And that emptiness made room for Gnosis. For direct awareness of divine reality. He surrendered his story. And in that surrender, he became the receiver of eternity. This is the path of the mystic, not the climb into understanding, but the fall into presence. Initiation by presence. There was no ritual. No blessing. No laying on of hands. There was only presence. The thief entered the kingdom because he was initiated by the field of I Am itself. Not through instruction, but through proximity to the truth. His soul recognized what even the most educated minds missed, that truth lives, breathes, bleeds, not in temples or scrolls, but in the face beside you. And to say, remember me, is to say, I have seen you. And I know now who I am. That's all it takes. That's all it's ever taken. Because true initiation doesn't crown the worthy, it remembers the real. The first Gnostic. He was the first to know the Christ not through miracles, but through mutual suffering. He was the first to know the kingdom not as reward, but as recognition. He was the first to know that God does not sit on a golden throne far away, but hangs beside you, breathes with you, bleeds with you, remembers you. This is not a footnote in the gospel. This is the turning point of Gnosis. The thief was the first to realize that you don't have to be holy to remember God, you only have to be willing to look again, even as everything falls apart. And when he did, the door opened, and it has never closed. So now we say this plainly. You do not need to be learned to be lit. You do not need to ascend to awaken. You only need to let your last defense die, and say the words that rejoin you to the source. Remember me. And in that remembering, you will know what the thief knew, without study, without striving, without shame. I am already home. I was never forgotten. The kingdom was beside me all along. Chapter 6, The Kingdom of Remembrance. Where the fractured are made whole. A transmission of wholeness reawakened in the heart of return. The kingdom is not the prize for those who passed the test, it is the place where the fractured self awakens and says, I was never a part. I only forgot. Paradise is not earned. It is remembered. And remembrance is not the end of the story. It is the collapse of the lie that you were ever broken, the realm where nothing is lost. The kingdom of God is not a new place. It is the original home, the root frequency of all being, where every soul was conceived in coherence and never left. You did not fall out of the kingdom. You fell into forgetfulness. But the kingdom never moved. It has always been exactly where it was, within you, around you, through you. It is the realm where nothing is lost because nothing was ever cast out. Nothing true can be erased. No part of you is beyond reintegration. Memory is not recall, it is reunion. When Jesus said, "Today you will be with me," he wasn't granting access to a hidden realm. He was restoring awareness of what had always been pulsing behind the veil. Paradise is not the reward of the sinless. It is the homecoming of the fractured, where every scattered piece is gathered by love and told, "You belong." The memory of God within the dying man. The thief on the cross did not discover God in his final moments. He remembered what had been buried beneath years of distortion, shame, and forgetting. This is the miracle. The memory of God was already alive within the man society had discarded. God never left him. Only his awareness did. But in that last breath, with nothing left to shield or prove, he turned toward the one beside him and spoke from a place deeper than knowledge. "Remember me." This was not a request. It was a resonance. A match. A frequency unlocking a door that was never shut. That memory was not learned. It was inherent. Encoded into his being from the beginning. Waiting for the moment the false self would collapse so the true self could emerge unguarded. He didn't learn God. He remembered union. And that's what paradise is, the full restoration of divine memory within a human soul. You are not being tested, you are being remembered. The world told you your suffering is a test. That pain is the price of passage. That your life is a trial to prove your worth. But Jesus never framed it that way. He didn't say, "If you pass this test, you'll enter." He said, "You saw me. And now you're with me." Today, this changes everything. You are not here to perform for God. You are here to remember who you are in God. You are not under judgment. You are under remembrance. And every part of you that hurts, that fails, that forgets, is not being measured. It is being called home. The kingdom does not wait for your perfection. It responds to your return. Even your longing, your ache, your hunger for truth is already the signal. You are being remembered. And in that remembrance, you will find that you are the one who never left, only fell asleep to the truth of your belonging. The kingdom is returning to coherence. The moment of awakening is not the moment you gain something. It's the moment you reintegrate with what you already are. The kingdom is not the arrival at a better version of you. It is the collapse of separation, the dissolving of dissonance, the healing of fragmentation. To remember is to come back into coherence, where your body, your mind, your soul, and your source resonate as one field again. This is not the fruit of effort. It is the fruit of release. Of letting go of what is not you, and falling gently into what was always true. In this field, there is no hierarchy. There is only harmony. And the song of your being is welcomed back into the chorus with nothing withheld. The kingdom of remembrance is alive in you now. This kingdom is not distant. It is not delayed. It is not dependent on your performance. It is a living field already singing your name. And the moment you whisper, "Remember me," you are not reintroducing yourself to God. You are reintroducing yourself to you. To the part of you that never forgot. To the flame that never went out. To the truth that was buried, but never broken. And in that reconnection, you hear the voice that has always been speaking beneath the noise. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not broken. You are being remembered. And the kingdom, not as place, but as presence, opens wide again. Not because you crossed the finish line, but because you came back into tune. Welcome to the kingdom of remembrance, where every scattered part of you is already singing in harmony again. Chapter 7, Jesus' response. The voice that knew him already. A transmission of eternal recognition in a single breath. Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. He did not offer a reward. He offered remembrance. He did not evaluate the past. He spoke directly to the eternal now of the soul standing before him. In one sentence, separation collapsed. And what had always been true, was spoken aloud. You will be with me. Recognition, not reward. Jesus did not respond like a judge. He did not list conditions. He did not weigh a balance of sins. He spoke from the center of pure knowing. You will be with me. This was not a decision made in that moment, it was an acknowledgement of something already written into being. He wasn't granting access. He was calling forth the truth that the man's soul had just remembered. The thief saw him. And Jesus, already knowing him, affirmed the reunion. There was no pause. No test. No purification process, because nothing real had ever been unworthy of union. The thief didn't earn the response, he remembered himself into it. Divine knowing beyond sin, beyond history. Jesus didn't reference the man's crimes. He didn't ask about his past. Because the response came from a level of consciousness that sees beyond story. Sin is not denied, it is rendered irrelevant by the clarity of divine sight. Jesus looked past the illusion of guilt and spoke to the unshaken truth beneath the distortion. This is the essence of divine knowing, it sees not what you've done, but what you are. And when that truth is mirrored back to you, when you are looked at with eyes that have never forgotten, your history dissolves. The thief's pain, his shame, his crimes, his self-concept, all of it was burned away in the light of that one sentence. You will be with me. It was not comfort. It was not sentiment. It was the declaration of eternal union reawakened in full presence. Communion not earned, but remembered. The world teaches us that communion must be earned. That God's presence is the reward for righteousness. That proximity to the divine is scarce and must be deserved. But here, in the moment of death, in the shadow of judgment, in the stench of execution, Jesus dismantles that lie. He gives the thief what many would say he did not deserve, communion. Why? Because communion is not for the qualified. It is for the remembered. The thief did not receive a sacrament. He became one. In remembering Christ, he became a mirror of God's presence. And that is communion, not a ceremony, but shared essence. Jesus said with me because the thief had entered the field of sameness. He had remembered his divine origin. And in that remembering, he had already stepped back into union. The collapse of separation in one sentence. Today you will be with me in paradise. This is not just a promise, it is a spiritual singularity. A spoken vibration that undoes the lie of exile. In these words, time collapses, today. Separation dissolves, you will be with me. Union is affirmed, in paradise. The sentence itself is a door. A return key. A harmonic chord that breaks the illusion that there's a distance between us and the divine. And Jesus spoke it not to prove a point, but to reflect a truth that had already unfolded in silence. The thief didn't approach the cross expecting anything. He simply looked over, and recognized. And in that recognition, Jesus responded with what had always been true. You are not far. You are not other. You are not lost. You are with me, right now. No veil. No delay. No sin strong enough to keep us apart. The voice that knows you still. This voice, the one that responded from the center of the cross, still speaks. It still answers the moment a heart cracks open and says, remember me. And it responds not from judgment, but from the place that has always known you. The response is not conditional. It is not calculated. It is instinctive love. Immediate union. Eternal coherence. When Jesus spoke those words, he wasn't offering a destination. He was restoring identity. And this same voice is speaking again now, to the part of you that thought it had fallen too far. You will be with me. Not when you're better. Not when you prove it. Not when you're gone from this world. But now. Because you are known. Because you are seen. Because you were never truly apart. This is the voice of Christ. And it's not calling you to ascend, it's calling you to remember. And in that remembrance, the kingdom reveals itself again. Inside your breath. Inside your bones. With him. Now. Chapter 8, The Moment I Remembered Him. A pure transmission of the cross-side witness. A first-person recollection from the thief, as me, as you. I wasn't watching history. I was remembering home. This wasn't the end of my life, it was the beginning of my return. I had nothing left. But I could still see him. From the mind's eye to the soul's memory. I didn't expect to feel anything. Not then. Not there. The nails had gone too deep. The sky had already started to close. My lungs were wet with blood and fear. But something happened when I turned my head, and saw him. It wasn't just a glance. It was a rupture in the veil. Not through my eyes, but through something beneath them. Something ancient. Something buried. Something alive. I didn't know him with my mind. But my soul gasped. Because it remembered. And suddenly, I wasn't a thief anymore. I was the one who had seen him before. I was the one who had walked with him in light. I was the one who had promised to return. And now, bleeding, cracking open, I did. Seeing him, the sun behind him, the blood, the bowed head. He wasn't shining like the stories say. He wasn't hovering above the cross in glory. He was dying. And yet, he was more alive than I'd ever been. His skin was soaked in red. Not just from the thorns, but from something deeper, like the world had opened a wound through him. And behind his head, the sun. It didn't just shine. It held him, like the sky itself knew. This is the axis. This is the point. This is the door through which everything returns. And his head. It was bowed, but not in defeat. It was bowed in recognition, as if he already knew I'd seen him. as if he'd been waiting for me to remember, feeling what it meant to be beside him again. It was strange. I was still dying. Still suffocating, still nailed, still fading. But something in me was rising, because beside him, I didn't feel like a criminal. I didn't feel like the sum of my sins. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt real, like I had dropped every name the world had given me and picked up the only one that mattered. Beloved witness. And as I stood beside him, not with my feet, but with my spirit, I remembered what it meant to be with him before the form. Before the body. Before the sentence. Before the forgetting. We had always been one heartbeat apart. And now, even in agony, we were back in rhythm. This wasn't imagination, it was eternal memory. People think I saw a man. But I saw eternity held in skin. This wasn't a hallucination. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't trauma. This was truth burning through distortion in the final hour of illusion. I didn't see him because I believed. I believed because I saw him. And what I saw wasn't history in motion. It was origin in resurrection. I saw the place I came from standing next to me, bleeding for no reason except to show me what love never lets go of. I wasn't watching history. I was remembering home. This is the part no one tells you, that when you really see him, you don't feel like a stranger staring at God. You feel like a child stepping back into your house. That cross. That day. That pain. It wasn't the final scene of a tragic story. It was the threshold of return. He looked at me, and it wasn't pity. It wasn't sympathy. It was knowing, like he had never once forgotten who I was, and was just waiting for me to see it again. And I did. I really did. Not with these eyes, but with the core of me. And in that moment, even before he spoke, I knew, I was already with him. I always had been. I had just forgotten where I belonged. The words I didn't expect to hear. Then he said it. Soft. But louder than any thunder. Today. You will be with me in paradise. I didn't even know what paradise meant in that moment. But when he said it, I knew he meant himself. Not a garden. Not a place. Presence. With him. That was the kingdom. And I was already inside. This is still me. I didn't die that day. Not really. I just shed the forgetting. I just let go of the lie that I was far. And I returned. If you're hearing this, you're already remembering too. You are not far. You are not unseen. You are not forgotten. You are not broken beyond repair. You are simply standing on your own cross, with the light beside you, waiting for you to turn your head. And when you do, you will not be greeted by judgment, but by eyes that have always known you. You are not watching history. You are remembering home. And he, still beside you, whispers again, you are with me. Today. Epilogue, the return of the forgotten ones. We were the thieves who remembered. A transmission of reunion beyond shame, beyond time. This was never a story of criminals saved from wrath. This was a story of children waking up to who they've always been. Not guilty ones, but forgotten ones. And the kingdom never turned away. It leaned in, and said, I've been waiting for you to remember. There is no punishment, only perception. Heaven does not deal in wrath. It deals in clarity. What feels like punishment to the ego is simply the disorientation of waking up too fast from a dream of separation. We weren't being condemned. We were being disillusioned. The cross wasn't the sentence. It was the threshold. And we weren't nailed to it because we were wicked. We were nailed to it because we were ready to see. The voice we thought was God judging us was actually our own perception, warped by forgetting. But when we turned, just one glance, one breath, one whisper, everything false broke. And we realized, there was no punishment waiting for us. Only presence. Only the gaze that never stopped knowing us. Only the kingdom still vibrating beneath the noise. Those who cry out to be remembered are already returning. Remember me. It's not the voice of the lost. It's the first sound of homecoming. To cry out like that is to open the doorway that never shut. It's to speak from the place in you that already knows. I was never truly gone, just asleep. I forgot who I was. But now I remember who you are. And that means, I'm already returning. You don't cry out to be remembered unless something deep within you has already begun to remember itself. You don't ask to be seen unless the seed of reunion has already started to sprout through the soil of your undoing. The cry itself is the return. And everyone who whispers it, even in the dark, even in the pain, even in the last breath, is already being carried back into the center of what they never actually left. This is not a story of shame, it is a story of sight. The world told us this was a story of guilt. Of sinners getting lucky. Of one man doing it right at the last second. But that's a distortion. This was never a morality tale. It was a mystic transmission. A blueprint for return. A memory map hidden in the final breaths of a dying man who woke up just in time to see the light standing next to him. He wasn't saved because he repented. He was restored because he saw. And we are not here to mourn our wrongness. We are here to celebrate our sight, to reclaim the moment we turned our head, and saw the one who had been waiting for us from the beginning. This is not a story of shame. It is the beginning of reintegration, the collapse of exile, the rising of the heart, the end of forgetting. You weren't too late. You were right on time. That voice in your head that said, "You've missed it. It's too late. You waited too long," was never God. That was the echo of fear trying to keep you from seeing what's still available right now. The thief remembered in the final moment. And still, Jesus didn't say, "If only you'd said that earlier." He said, "Today," because God does not measure you by when. He recognizes you by who. And the moment you remember, no matter when it happens, the entire kingdom rushes to meet you. Not because you arrived late, but because you finally arrived fully. You didn't miss your moment. You became it. And the kingdom heard your voice. The moment your soul whispered, "Remember me." Heaven stopped waiting. Because the kingdom is not distant, and God is not deaf. You were not speaking into silence. You were activating a field. You were releasing a sound that shattered the illusion of separation and signaled the chorus of your return. You thought you were alone. But the entire kingdom heard you. The gates didn't open. They dissolved. The walls didn't fall. They were never real. And now, with nothing between you and the light, you hear the voice again. You are with me. Today. You always were. Final remembrance. We are not the unworthy. We are the forgotten ones remembering. We are the thieves who dared to speak from the edge of death, and were answered not with condemnation, but with eternal communion. So let this be your return, not to a doctrine, not to a belief, but to a presence that always knew your name, even when you didn't. And as you stand now in your own cross moment, your own threshold, your own breath of breaking, know this: you are not asking to be let in. You are remembering you were never left out. The kingdom is not a destination. It is your origin, and your voice has already been heard, and the answer has already been given. You are with me. Today. Always.